Tromaville, and welcome to the second episode of Talkin Troma with me, your host, Zack, the podcast where I do a deep dive on a Troma film. The movie on today's episode was honestly one of the big movies I wanted to talk about when I thought of doing this podcast, as it's always been one of my favorites, but rarely hearing it mentioned outside of diehard Troma fans. That movie is Frostbiter, Wrath of the Wendigo. This is what Lloyd Kaufman had to say about Frostbiter in his book, All I Need to Know About Filmmaking, I Learned from the Toxic Avenger. Not to be confused with the great American poet Robert Frostbiter, or the British talk show host Sir David Frostbiter, this is the Frostbiter, based on the Caliber Press comic book. The cast includes Ron Ashton, former guitarist for Iggy Pop and the Stooges, one of the most horrifying creatures ever to be committed to celluloid. Not Ron, the Frostbiter. It destroys those who disturb its resting place. When the Frostbiter arrives, hell has frozen over. Indeed scary. I have a short interview clip of Sergeant Kabuki Man NYPD interviewing Lloyd Kaufman about Frostbiter. Let's listen.
Lloyd Kaufman, president of Troma Studios and the creator of The Toxic Avenger. I just finished watching Frostbiter, Wrath of the Wendigo. Fabulous movie. How was this put together?
Frostbiter, Wrath of the Wendigo was a comic book put out by Caliber Press.
Oh, wow.
And Tom Chaney, the director, and the Sorensen producing team made a movie out of it. And lucky for Troma, we were able to release it on Troma Team Video.
The movie was put together so well. Was it a first-time director, or had he been around for many years?
The director is Tom Chaney, and I'm pretty sure this was his first movie. Troma's a good place for first-time directors.
I was really frightened by the special effects. Everything looked so real and live, very animate. Who did that?
Gary Jones, who is also the associate producer of Frostbiter. All of it is non-computer, no high-tech. It's all done by hand, lovingly by hand. And it's great to see a movie where you don't have all this high-tech, phony people flying through computerized backgrounds, or sometimes the stars aren't even in the movie. In this movie, the actors are actually there. And it is more frightening than what you see out of these $100 million movies.
The music brought me through the film very well, and I liked the rock and roll. Who was playing the music there?
Well, you know, speaking of music, Ron Ashton is the star of Frostbiter. He also was lead guitarist for Iggy
Pop,
and
right?
Exactly,
Yes,
Iggy
yes.
Pop and the Stooges. Not only does Ron Ashton star in the movie, but he plays guitar on the music track. And of course, Iggy Pop is becoming big again thanks to this masterpiece called Train Spotting that's coming out now. So you're going to hear a lot more about Ron Ashton and Iggy Pop. And you know, Elvis, Hitler, and other alternative rock groups comprise a good deal of the score too. And of course, the groups are very famous now. They were not famous when they were first discovered by Tom Chaney and the Sorensen.
That is about all the information I could find about the making of Frostbiter, Wrath of the Wendigo, other than a short Wikipedia page, and I was pretty skeptical of the accuracy that the information that Sergeant Kabuki Man was bringing us fans. One thing I hope to accomplish on this podcast is not only to celebrate those movies, but also giving you, the listener, some information on how the movie was made. So I tracked down the filmmakers, director Tom Chaney, and producer/special effects Gary Jones, and asked them if they wouldn't mind coming on the show to tell us more about the making of Frostbiter. And fortunately for us, they said yes. But before we get to our special guests, I want to play you the trailer. The trailer is all instrumental with no speaking, so I want you to close your eyes and imagine the following. Unless you're driving to work, and then for the love of God, please keep your eyes open. Alright, so imagine this. Rock star, Ron Ashton, blue stop-motion centaur-looking demons, miniature airplanes being attacked by winged serpents, snow-covered cabins in the woods that seem to feel like they have come straight from the Evil Dead franchise, blood, gore, a topless Miss October who turns into a demon, and then the tagline, Hell has frozen over. Here it is, the trailer for Frostbiter, Wrath of the Wendigo. Welcome back. That was the trailer for Frostbiter, Wrath of the Wendigo. We're here with our special guests today, producer, special effects of Frostbiter, Gary Jones, and writer and director of Frostbiter, Tom Chaney. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thanks for having us, Zack. Excited to be here.
Good to be here.
I was telling Gary earlier, when I decided to do this podcast, I wanted to shed some light on some Troma movies that don't often get talked about, which really should. And number 2 on my list was Frostbiter. It's honestly one of my favorite Troma movies of all time. So it's definitely an honor that you guys would want to talk about it.
Well, thanks for having us, and thanks for saying that. Yeah, it's the legend of Frostbiter goes on, and a very, very strange thing happened to me at the end of last year. I received a random email from a woman that claimed to be out of Iceland. And she said that she puts on every year the Frostbiter Film Festival. And would I be interested in going to Iceland to speak at this festival? And I thought I was being punked. But through the course of the next few months and emails and you know, kind of checking out this festival that actually existed in this small fishing town in Iceland, my wife and my son and I ended up in Iceland in January to be a part of the Frostbiter Film Festival.
That's awesome.
And it was like, are you kidding me? That's like the worst movie ever made. But no, they love this movie. And this woman, Lovisa, she actually enjoyed the movie as a kid. It kind of stuck with her. And so she has this horror film festival in Iceland, and she named it Frostbiter. Actually, I know they won't be able to see this, but this is the poster from this year's Frostbiter Film Festival.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was great, and it's a really cool film festival. It's in this small fishing town called Akranes, which is about an hour, a little more than an hour out of Reykjavik, Iceland, and they flew us out. They treated us like royalty, and it was just an amazing, surreal experience.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so if you ever get a chance, you want to hang out with some really cool people and experience a really... Go ahead, Gary.
No, I was saying that's really cool. It's like we did a movie, in 88? 1988, I think.
What, this one?
Wendigo, was it 80 or Frostbiter? 88, 87.
I don't know when we
Somewhere
started.
around there.
Yeah, I mean,
Which is
87.
funny. I've been looking up, trying to find information about the movie, and it's kind of sparse out there on the internet lands. So I've seen 1990 and 1995.
You know, I think it was the release was 1990. I think we started in 88, 87, 88. It was a couple year process, but no, I was just thinking, Tom. You probably would have enjoyed that call had you got that call in 1990. Would have been more uplifting, you know. But it was cool. I had mentioned earlier, you know, it was like we learned on that movie. I mean, Frostbiter is the movie that, you know, we got to try everything on and figure out how to make movies, really. And it, you know, if it wasn't for that, Mosquito wouldn't have happened. So it's kind of it's interesting that, but Frostbiter kind of was the beginning of everything.
That's so cool. Well, real quick, tell us a little bit about the story of Frostbiter. Like, what's the movie about?
So the movie is about how do I describe it quickly? It centers around a creature that's been guarded for a very long time by an ancient old man called the Guardian, and he lives in this cabin up, you know, somewhere cold, and the cabin is surrounded by a circle of skulls. And a couple of drunk hunters, come up to his cabin and stumble upon the old man, and he tries to get them to just leave, and they end up shooting both one of the skulls and shooting him, really by accident. And the hunters were played by Ron Ashton, rock star Ron Ashton, and a friend of ours, Dave Lowe, who Gary Jones has been a partner with for a very, very long time. And once that circle is broken, the creature, the Frostbiter, who we were calling Wendigo, comes back to life. So at the same time, fate picks a new guardian. So what happens is, as this creature is now released upon this small island that's full of hunters to wreak havoc, another guardian is chosen, and this young lady must travel far across the country to defeat and put this creature back at rest. And that's, I don't know if that comes out in the movie, but that's the story.
I think it does.
I think we used, didn't we use Manitou Island?
Yes,
Manitou Island.
Manitou,
yeah. And the line is where small game are plentiful. And we show this frozen skull island where it looks like nothing could ever live. But yeah, where small game were plentiful.
Those matte paintings that you guys have of Manitou Island are just, they're awesome looking. Are those hanging up in someone's house? Or
Bob Kaganich, a friend of ours, who's an incredible artist, and I think Gary probably is using them on his new movie as well. We've used and known Bob for a long time, and he did those paintings for us.
He did stuff on Evil Dead 2. Did the bridge painting, the broken bridge on Evil Dead 2. And yeah, he's done a lot of matte paintings back in the day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So one thing I did see was that there's rumor that the movie got started from a comic book, that it was adapted from a comic book. Actually, I was able to track down a copy of the Frostbiter comic book. But
actually, Zach, the comic book came second. So, and I don't know, I don't know all the marketing. Once we got a producer involved and he put in a lot of finish money, a lot of weird things started to happen. But that comic book came afterwards, and that was done by Dark Horse. Is that Dark Horse Comics?
Caliber Press.
Caliber Press.
Caliber.
Yeah.
And they were right here in the area, and I actually worked with them in doing the comic book. So even though they thought it'd be cool to say based on it, it wasn't. It was based. I wrote the screenplay in my mother's kitchen.
I was wondering. I was like, there's a lot of Troma references on the comic, and I'm pretty sure this was started before Troma even picked up the phone.
Yeah, it's true. That comic book has a lot of, it's Troma. You get that feeling, yeah.
Have you, so this is a pretty Troma-centric podcast. Have you had any experience with Troma before any of this, or like familiar with the Toxic Avenger or anything like that before Frostbiter?
Of course, we were familiar with Toxic Avenger. It was kind of an independent movie that went crazy and really kind of lifted Troma into the spotlight. Right, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, we were following the Troma movies, Sergeant Kabuki Man and Toxic Avenger, and so we were very much aware of them at the time when we were making Frostbiter.
Awesome.
But we connected with them when we went out to the American film market.
Right.
Gary and I were out there, and we were just showing the movie to people. And at that time, like I went 2 years ago or last year to AFM, and you need a pass and you need all the security and different levels of passes. Back then, I remember just walking around and just like introducing myself and saying, "Oh, I have this little movie. Would you like to take a look at it?" And that's where we connected with Troma.
That was kind of the cool thing, because you as a filmmaker, you're making a movie and everything, but then it's also like, okay, it's done, and now you're going to go into the marketplace. And back then, AFM was pretty cool. You could walk in, get a drink, meet people, see other filmmakers and stars, and actually talk to distributors. They would say like, okay, we'll give you this much for it or whatever, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, we got to make a deal. It's like. But it was pretty cool. I remember that was kind of an eye-opener there. And, I remember being pretty excited when it looked like Troma was going to pick it up. Yeah, we actually did they pick it? They picked it up, Tom, before we met them in New York, didn't they?
Yeah, so they picked it up at AFM, and then I think we were in New York mixing Mosquito.
That's right.
We dropped by, and Lloyd Kaufman would call you Tom Chaney.
Yeah.
Tom.
Well, the guys were great because it was Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz, and they had desks like this, right? So they faced each other. And you'd go up there, and it was in Hell's Kitchen, and you go up these stairs, and it was this real thin building, and the rooms were just packed with boxes, and kind of looked like how we made our movies, you know. I mean, it was just stuff everywhere, and you go in, and you know, we sat there in the chairs, and Lloyd's offering us like fresh fruit. There's like fruit vendors outside, you know, like the old Godfather 2 fruit vendors. And he's got oranges, and there, have an orange, you know, and he's giving us oranges.
Yeah, he gave us oranges. He was like, "Hey, you want an orange?"
Yeah.
Tom,
And,
take this orange.
It was pretty cool. You
I don't
know,
have any money, but here's an orange.
Yeah, the cool thing about Lloyd, you know, with Troma, and that even Lloyd is like, yes, they're low budget, you know, they were low budget distributors, but they were real. You know, like you walked in there and he was right there, and Michael Hertz is right there, and you know, you're one-on-one, and they're filmmakers. So it's weird. You there's a comfort zone. You feel like, you know, you're at a certain level with them. They don't talk down to you. It's not like, and they don't throw millions of dollars at you, but it just felt kind of interesting that we had arrived at a certain level, that we were with a distributor who you could actually have a one-on-one discussion with, which was kind of rare for us at the time. Anyway.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the making of the movie Frostbiter. So a lot, you were telling me earlier, Gary, that a good chunk of the movie was filmed in a basement, but parts of it were actually filmed in, what is it, your uncle's cabin?
Yeah, we did about, I don't know, Tom, I think we did maybe about 10% of the interiors, but most of the exteriors of where you see the cabin, we did up in Michigan. And I think we shot for a week. I can't remember, 5-6 days, Tom. We lived in the cabin. We drove up there, stayed in the cabin, and shot in and around the cabin, and slept in the cabin and shot sequences there. And that was really when we actually started the movie, where the guys come in and find the Guardian and the hunters, and there's a little bit of attack in there. And I think it's really was the opening with the 2 hunters. That's primarily what we did there.
Right.
It was kind of fun. And then we had all the fake snow. And we were blowing it all around. You know, it was wintertime and everything. And
What'd you use for fake snow?
We had those flakes, those little plastic flakes.
Okay.
We'd been doing a lot of commercial work, so we were able to get stuff of the commercials and that when we were working. But Ron Ashton would make chili, and you know, he'd make dinner, and we'd, you know, sleep on the cots there, and it was kind of cold and everything, but we'd get up and turn on the lights, get something to eat, and start shooting. It was a winter film camp. It was kind of fun.
That's a great description. Yeah, so Gary and I met, we should talk about that. We met on a low budget movie that shot here just west of Ann Arbor in a small town called Manchester. And I was a film student at the time, and Gary was a working effects guy, and he had been hired to do the effects, and I was just a production assistant. And so I met Gary, and for lack of a better term, was instantly attracted to his energy and what he could do with the effects work that he was doing and his knowledge of filmmaking. And so we became pretty good friends on that movie, which I thought was a really cool experience, despite it being a pretty bad movie. And after that, we decided to start this thing. And I was, like I said, I was still in college, but was working in the film industry on commercials or whatever. And I would save up every penny I could, and then we would buy some film stock, rent cameras, pull the gang together, and then shoot for a couple days. And of course, at that time, you know, it cost money to process the film. You had to buy the film. So it was a slow process for that reason. But eventually, Gary and I both worked on another movie years later on the west side of Michigan. We're from Michigan. And on that movie, I connected with the producer of that film and told him I had a movie that was almost done and we just needed finish money. And he and I connected, cut a deal, and then we finished the movie with him.
Awesome. So I've noticed, just kind of going through your guys' IMDb's, that it seems like there's a lot of crossover in like the Michigan film community. I see Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, and a lot of Sam Raimi's guys pop up in there as well. And Gary, you did work on Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. The first movie I worked on with those guys was the Xyz Murders, which became a Crime Wave, was
Okay.
their second movie. I had heard about the guys when they were making the original Evil Dead. I read it in a newspaper and I couldn't find where they were at because they weren't even shooting in Michigan. So I sort of missed the first Evil Dead, but then connected with them afterwards. But on Evil Dead 2, I got hired to do a bunch of additional props. They did a lot of reshooting, and they came to Michigan and rebuilt part of the cabin and shot a bunch of stuff. So I got hired to do a bunch of supplemental special effects and miniature trees attacking the cabin. And Tom came and helped me on that. We built miniature trees and puppeteered trees. So I was doing effects on that. And then Army of Darkness was out in LA, where I went out to LA to do that, to work on that one, and did a lot of propage and stuff. But yeah, so anything that would come to Michigan, it would be like, I would either get on and doing special effects, and Tom would get on different things too, either in effects or building sets or props so it's sort of like, I look back at it now, it's like anything that came to town, any professional films, we kind of always got something on them, because we were, I know we were good at what we did, maybe not the best, but I think we also had that naive enthusiasm where like, it didn't matter if it was $1 or 10, this was a movie. And, we had that approach, and I think when me and Tom connected, and started working together, that was really the thing. It was sort of like a fearlessness of like, oh, we're just going to go make a movie, Tom had a big project that he wanted to do, and it was like, nothing seemed out of reach, and so I think that was sort of the key to what we did, and how we connected on all this stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of crossover. And Tom, you worked on, did you do some sets or something on the Hoffa movie or?
Yeah, I worked on Hoffa for a few months, and then I did work on Evil Dead 2 for probably 3 or 4 months. I worked on the set. We rebuilt the cabin set. I worked with Larry, Larry on that, and then I worked with you on the effects. So I ended up working on it for 3 or 4 months, and
then Moontrap. We all worked on Moontrap and did a bunch of stuff on the original Moontrap. And so, yeah, it seems like we always kind of, we got most of the things that came to town and right in around that time frame, we were able to get on them. And in the meantime, doing our own stuff, trying to push the ball up the hill, make our own movies.
Well, one thing I always thought was fun. So this goes back to when I first saw Frostbiter when I was in high school. I was a student filmmaker. Then, and in Evil Dead, they have a Hills Have Eyes poster hanging on the wall. And then in Frostbiter, you guys have an Evil Dead 2 poster hanging on the wall. So my student film, I put my Frostbiter box up on the wall. I was like, well, I'll be in that lineage.
The next line. Yeah, that's cool. Really cool.
So some of those outdoor shoots, I'm from Denver, Colorado, so I've never braved filming in the snow or the cold. And just seeing those dudes out walking around, it looked awful. Like, was it pretty cold on those days, or?
I have a reputation, Zach, of not shooting in like a 75-degree day or, a perfect stage. I have a reputation of dunes in the winter, snow in the winter. So yes, it was extremely cold, and everybody kind of gutted it out. And so yes, it was very, very cold shooting that.
Well, it was also one of the reasons me and Tom connected a lot on the same type of movies we like. You say the extremes, but if you're going to do a creature feature, a monster movie, of lore. We loved like, Deliverance or Emerald Forest, or Bridge on the River Kwai. When you go back to those kind of movies, this is not, My Fair Lady where you're in a park or, we're on a beach somewhere talking about a monster. I mean, so it's like the natural thing was to go to those extremes, I obviously it was cold, and I'm like, the stage was set. It was a winter, the movie's winter. Well, guess what? It's easy to not fake it if you've got it. But, what was interesting though, is like, yes, it was cold, but there was an energy about shooting, because we were shooting the first movie. Yeah. And it was about, we were rolling film and we had sound and we had lights and we knew at the end, we could get warm in the cabin and we'd have chili or whatever, and we'd have some beers. So it really, it it was brutal, but it's hard to say that, would I do it differently? I don't know. If Tom will write another sequel, maybe we can shoot it in Hawaii or something on the beach. But no, I think the extremes is you have to do that. And
Yeah.
Tom is like, the Iron Man here. I mean, it's like, yeah, if it's nice weather, it's not time to shoot.
Yeah,
you got to go out there when there's a hurricane. That's going to be cool, right? Right.
Whenever I shoot my stuff, it's super late at night. We get the best performances of sleep deprivation. So how did Ron Ashton get involved with the movie? And for those listening who might not know, Ron Ashton is the lead guitar, or was the lead guitar for Iggy Pop and the Stooges. So that's a pretty awesome role there.
Yeah, Ron, I think, is ranked one of the top 25 guitarists in the world of all time, rock guitarists. And Gary and I think Gary and I both met him. Gary may have known him earlier, but we both met him on the movie The Carrier that Gary and I met on.
That's where we met, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you met Ron there too?
Same time, yep.
And Ron was just this incredibly funny, nice man. And I honestly, I'm a little naive when it comes to music. I'm probably naive to a lot of things, but I didn't realize who Ron Ashton was, and I just became friends with him. And then on the set one day, somebody said to me, "You know who that is, right?" And I said, "No, it's Ron Ashton." And they said, "No, he's the lead guitarist from Iggy and the Stooges." And, I discovered Iggy and the Stooges after I met Ron. So Ron and I became friends, lifelong friends, and so did Gary, maybe even more so. But when we said to Ron, "Hey, we want to do this little movie, you want to do it?" he was the first guy to say yeah. And he jumped right in with both feet, and we made a couple of other movies with Ron after that.
Ron was, Ron is a movie fan. He had said that if he wasn't, if he wasn't doing the guitar, wasn't doing music, he wanted to be a B-movie actor. He loved the B-movie actors, the working class guy actor that never made $100 million, but, you saw him. He was in the Rockford Files, or he was in that Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry movie. He loved all those B-movie guys. And I think Ron, when you see Ron's performances, it's clear, he's got the B-movie thing, So when I go over to his house, we'd sit up all night smoking cigars and watching old late night movies, So he was such a movie fan that it didn't matter where we were. He was going to be there. And
Ron had a very funny, this is not politically correct, and I'll say it, but Ron once told me that if a movie didn't have monsters, submarines, or boobs, he wasn't watching it.
There's the filmmaker Don Dohler. He did Night Beast. He said, the movies I make have boobs, blood, and beasts. So.
Yeah. So Ron definitely would have watched it, and so Ron, like Gary said, just loved this type of movie and would just jump in with us with both feet. He was a great, great man. He's since passed.
The first stuff we shot for Frostbiter was the scene with Ron and Dave Logue up in the cabin where the two hunters come in. It was like the first stuff. And I remember Ron up there, Ron's making the food for us, and he's also performance. But then we'd get ready to shoot in the morning. We'd get up, we just throw shit on, right?
Yeah.
Ron's in there blow drying his hair. It's got to be perfect. So if you look at that movie, you see him out in the snow with the gun hunting, but he's got perfect hair. It's just, he just had a style, it was like how he wanted himself to be seen,
Yeah.
And he had a vision, and, the lines come across, and I think the humor crept in more and more because of Ron. I think we started out with it not being, we're playing the humor so much, but I mean, you couldn't help it. You had Ron Ashton there. You had to use him. And he became, for us, he became that thing of like, we've got a character, there is a guy you can follow. He can be right over here off to the side, but you can always go to him. And It was great. You know, he's like the good luck charm. You know, like he had to be in the movie.
He's awesome. Do you guys have a favorite Iggy and the Stooges song?
Gary?
Yeah, I do. I guess it's got to be. What's the? I just blanked on it. What's the song? The chant, Tom. You know the chant that we did in Frostbiter.
Oh my God!
It's on one of the albums. It's like everybody's sitting around singing rum ja ja rum ja 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 rum.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was not my favorite because I had the first Stooges album. I like 1969.
I Want to Be Your Dog.
I Want to Be Your Dog. But when we were doing Wendigo, we sat around in the cab. We actually sat in that cabin, I think, and recorded us sitting all around singing that. I don't know if we used it in the movie. I can't remember, but I'd have to say it's that one because I remember sitting in the cabin with Ron up in Upper Michigan with all of us when we were filming, and us sitting around and recording us singing that. So, and then I have, many Ron stories, but the last one was, which was probably the coolest, was when they reunited the Iggy and the Stooges, when they got back together. I think it was like 2003 or 2004. They were going to play at Coachella. It was the first time, like 33, 34 years. And Ron and his brother Scott was back with Iggy, and it was the Stooges back out there performing. And Ron got me and my family passes on stage.
That's awesome.
So we were right off the side of the stage with there's Cameron Diaz over there, and who's the guy from Cheers? I keep forgetting his name. But
Danson?
No. The stoner.
Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson, yeah. And Danny DeVito. And there's all these people, and I'm like, what are these people doing here, And the Stooges came out, and Coachella just blew up, and Ron's out there, just going crazy. And it was just, it's like the second experience, That first one sitting in the cabin with him, and then that one was like, wow, Ron's a superstar. He wanted to, his music and everything, but he really was just a guy, But when he got out there, man, the crowds loved him. But I think we were fortunate enough. I think it was a real smart move, Tom, when we talked about who's going to play these hunters. We're like, well, they just get killed off at the beginning of the movie. But I think once you got Ron in there, it was like, there's no way Ron can die yet.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of a shock. I mean, spoiler for those who haven't seen it, but it is a shock when the Wendigo gets him and he turns into a zombie, because you're like, he's the leading dude. He's going to save everybody.
Well, that turning into a zombie thing, I think that was Tom's way of still not getting rid of him.
So we're on the subject of music. There's a song in the movie I do want to talk about, the Chili song.
Chili, no beans, no onion, no cheese.
That song is ridiculous, and it makes me laugh. You have like two different versions. There's more of a rock version. There's one that sounds like a Prince cover. Right. Can you tell me a little bit about the Chili song in the movie and the Chili Monsters?
Well, yeah. So the funny thing is, and it's amazing to me. Like, here I am in Iceland, and we showed Windwalker as part of the festival. They showed it, and then like she scheduled this other event, and I highly recommend this film festival. Super cool. Where we went into a bowling alley, and in like the basement of this bowling alley, she showed Frostbiter. And so it was the first time in really probably 10, 15, 20 years that I'd seen the movie. And just, doing other things. And the crowd was crazy about it. And, a lot of these people, it had been, of course, the movie that they named the festival after. And I said, but Lovisa, what about the music? She's like, we love the music. Well, that was an issue of contention when we were making the movie. The music was brought on by a music producer who was brought in by the producer of the movie. And he wanted to score it with this crazy rock and roll. And he even came to the mix, and at times I felt was mixing the rock music too loud. And so I'm working with David Cronenberg sound mixers, and they're like arguing with this guy. No, that's too loud. We're going to put it through a radio. And he's like, no, bring it up. I want it up. And so the music is what it is now. And the Chili song was put together and done by this music producer out of Detroit, Michigan, Rick Chofee. And so that I really didn't have a whole lot to do with the music. The Chili Bean Monsters, I did have a lot to do with. And I had created a Chili Bean Monster that I shot, and I shot pieces of it. And I showed it to Gary, and Gary said, Tom, that's the worst special effects of all time. He said, we've got to do something much more simple. I had like these winged creatures, and they were flying across the cabin, and it was what it was. And Gary said, let's do a puppet. Let's do puppets, and we can puppet these things. And so he created a bunch of these little puppets, and we reshot the scene. And I thought that they were just amazing. And that really is a fun scene.
I love those Chili Bean Monsters.
That's all Gary Jones right there. Gary Jones, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Gary, can you talk a little bit more about the special effects in the movie? One of my favorite, and I don't know if you did this effect or not, one of my favorites is at the beginning when you see the guy just melting down into the skeleton.
Oh, the skeleton.
Stop. Yeah.
Tom, I think you did that one, didn't you?
I did. Yep.
Yeah.
I just created a clay figure, and I sculpted it away and shot it stop motion.
That was Tom's homage. That was the Evil Dead thing. We were obviously very conscious of the Evil Dead movie, and I think we were trying. It was obviously inspiration. Yeah. I think that shot there really reminded me of like, yeah, we're in Evil Dead territory. But it was kind of cool for that effect, for what that was, that effect. I was working at the time. I had a company called Acme Special Effects, and my partner at the time, Dave Wogue. We were working out of a one-room schoolhouse, but we had started on the movie, and we had done, I think the first thing we did was an old age makeup for the Guardian in the movie, the old guy.
Yeah.
It kind of resembles a little bit like
Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, Little Big Man, Dustin Hoffman, the Dick Smith makeup. So, it's a little homage to that. That was like the first thing we did. And then I think we made a giant blue hand for the Wendigo monster. We just had pieces of stuff. But so when we first shot, we had those elements and skulls and things. And then we also had a skeleton that we put a bunch of blood and stuff on that we kind of puppeteered in the cabin for a little bit of fighting with Dave Wogue and slapping and stuff.
Yeah.
But then was later on, and it was like the second leg of the shoot. And this is, I think, after the other producers came on, Tom, with some financing to help get the film finished. And then to up the ante, we, as Tom said, he showed me the Chili Bean monster he had. And it was like a devil with wings and stuff. But I was like, if it was just too weird. We were kind of at a point too where, we had the movie, and it was just trying to think through like what's going to be satisfying. And, the Chili Bean monsters thing was like, well, it's coming out of the chili. Well, so that sort of influenced a lot of stuff. And we were trying to think budget-wise, what can we do, Could we make, instead of it having articulated, can we make it a hand puppet with rods and stuff? And so that became a hand puppet. And then we had shots with legs running, skitters across the floor. But it would be easy to just put your hand up through a pot of chili.
Yeah.
And do stuff, and put chili beans on it and stuff. And of course it's brown and everything. So we made hand puppets for those. And then, and we rigged some of them to blow up. We squibbed them and splattered them all over the place. And Tom was, throwing chili at the wall and stuff, for when they get shot. But then, like, probably the biggest thing was the witch outfit. When our good buddy Joe Hale wore the suit.
Yeah.
I forget who turned into the witch. Oh, no, it was the girl who
Miss October.
The Wicked
It was
Witch.
the
Yeah,
centerfold.
Miss October.
The centerfold came in, yeah.
But we made like a full bodysuit for our buddy Joe Hale, who's a filmmaker with us, a grip, a gaffer. He does everything. And he was willing to wear the suit. We made a full suit for him, all out of foam latex and everything. And that was the biggest deal. And we had done stuff, but I'd never really made anything that big. So that was like the first real foam latex, full suit. And of course it shrank. By the time we put it on Joel, it was like choking him. And, but that was pretty cool. When we finally got that together and shot that in the basement, the stuff just felt right. Wendigo was a big learning curve for us. We had worked on other people's movies, and now we were kind of making our own. And so I think the movie, as it went along and it took time to make, we were able to add to it, and cover up, things we didn't like and add to it to kind of take it in a different direction. But effects wise, those were kind of the main things. And then we did the airplane scene where the flying Reptilicus demon attacks the airplane. And
I like that you said it was Reptilicus, because
Dave Wogue did most of that. Dave Wogue built all that, did most of that. But we were referencing all our favorite movies and stuff. But yeah, the film it sort of took on. At the beginning when Ron came on board, it sort of influenced things. And Tom had the script, but he was able to go, well, if you keep Ron's character alive, you could shoehorn him in over here, bring it over there. And so I think there was a lot of happy accidents. Had we just gone up and spent 1 week and made a movie and came home, that wouldn't be Frostbiter, So I think there's a lot of, starts and stops, but I think ultimately at the end, we ended up working through all the different things to make it as cool as we could. And I know Tom, at the very end there with the music and everything, it was kind of disconcerting and a little disappointing to hear it finally. But I got to say, over time, there's a weird charm to it. And I don't think I could watch the chili bean scene without hearing that, that music. So it's like, it grows on you. I think Troma loves it for that reason, that it just was how they would have made it. How Troma would have made that movie.
No, I love it. Do you know if there's any talk of a Blu-ray coming out at all? Because if there's a movie that's deserved of a Blu-ray, definitely Frostbiter.
I don't know. Actually, Troma has owned it a lot longer than the original deal, and I probably should contact them and see, if they have any future plans. I mean, I know it's still out there. I know it's on Amazon, or was on Amazon Prime for a while. And so I haven't had contact with Troma, probably in 20 years. So as far as a Blu-ray, I don't know. But Gary actually had mentioned that as well, because Gary just put out the 20th or 25th? 20th anniversary of Mosquito, and that was retransferred, and that was put out on Blu-ray, right, Gary?
Yeah, Synapse Films put it out for us, and they do. I mean, their stuff's the best. Those guys love movies, and they go the extra mile to make sure if you're paying $14 or $20, whatever you're paying, you're getting the goods. And yeah, they did a really good job on it. But yeah, I think Frostbiter would be very interesting to see it in light, because everybody knows it. We had the same issue with Mosquito. Everybody kind of knows Frostbiter. If they know it, they saw a VHS tape, or maybe they did get a DVD later, but I'm sure it's not a very good quality. And so that I noticed with Mosquito, once we did the new transfer and we looked at the Blu-ray, it was like, Jesus, I've only seen the movie look that good one time at a screening we did at the Michigan Theater. When we put it on a big screen, we went, we have a movie, So I think it would be cool to get Frostbiter out like that. And I'm not sure about.
Well, I know Troma
deleted scenes right now.
I know Troma's been putting stuff out with Vinegar Syndrome, who, like Synapse, they do a pretty good job. They actually work with the filmmakers and stuff. So we'll put that out in the ether.
There you go.
There you go.
We'll bother Vinegar Syndrome or Synapse.
Hey, Tom, do you have any elements? Any?
I have some elements. I'd have to scrape together other elements. It's been so long and so many movies ago. I'd have to see what I have.
I was just wondering if you had any work print or anything, any outtakes or anything that'd be kind of fun.
I might have some old VHS behind the scenes stuff, but.
Oh yeah.
Be awesome. Well, before we wrap up on Frostbiter and start talking about some other movies, any final thoughts on Frostbiter?
Uh, I'm thrilled that it seems to have this second life or this long life. I mean, in the last year, connecting with you for this podcast and seeing it all the time via Troma and the Frostbiter Film Festival in Iceland, it's really it's nice, and it's kind of a surprise to me. This little movie that we put together so long ago just seems to have this life, and I'm honored to that people like it and are still watching it.
It's so much fun.
Thank you.
Well, I want to talk about Mosquito now because it seems like so many webs from Frostbiter like just kind of go over to Mosquito. Tom, you did director of photography on that one, and Gary, you directed Mosquito. You want to tell us? First we'll play the trailer real quick.
From the producers of The Blob and Prince of Darkness, and the special effects wizards behind Evil Dead 3, Hard Target, and Batman Returns, comes the science fiction film of the year. It came from another galaxy. It transformed one of Earth's smallest insects into a bloodthirsty swarm of terror. Now, 5 people brought together by fate will confront their worst nightmares.
There is definitely something out there.
Aliens, and they're everywhere. And this guy's obviously been zapped.
Are you insinuating that my brother and I have done anything wrong?
Something is killing these people and sucking them dry of blood.
It's a mosquito, all right, I'm positive.
Take a nap, pal.
AIDS, mosquito AIDS, hundreds of them, thousands of them. Ain't life a bitch?
Steve Dixon, Ron Ashton, Rachel Losell, Tim Lovelace, and Gunnar Hansen, star of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They will fight to survive and battle the ultimate enemy.
Man, the Late Show doesn't get any better than this.
And that was the trailer. And you want to tell us real quick the synopsis of Mosquito?
Well, I'll let Gary tell the synopsis, but basically, we after Frostbiter, or what at the time it was Wendigo, and then Troma actually retitled it Frostbiter. After Frostbiter, and what's funny is I noticed that Troma is now calling Frostbiter Wendigo. I don't know if you've noticed that at all, but like if you look it up on IMDb or some sites, it now says Wendigo. So it's almost like they've gone back to my original title. I'm not sure what's happening there, but
there was another movie called Wendigo that came out not too long ago.
Larry Fessenden directed that one.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, that's what Troma's doing. Hey, let's let the public think this is that one.
The old Roger Corman. No, kids, Carnosaur. It's the same thing as Jurassic Park.
Hey, sell a few more DVDs or VHS tapes that way.
So after Frostbiter was done, the question is what's next? And a couple of the people that had worked on Frostbiter in the finish Dave Theory and Eric Pasquarelli and I were putting together a movie at the time called Clash of the Astronauts. And we were picturing, trying to raise more money than we had for Frostbiter. And we were successful to a certain point, but we weren't able to raise as much money as we thought it would take to make this movie. And so finally, I remember going in, we had a little office in Ann Arbor, and going in one day and saying to Eric and David, guys, we should just do another small thing, and Gary's got this idea to shoot a movie about, at the time, I think he was calling it skeeters, giant mosquitoes. Let's call Gary and let's partner up with Gary and let's make skeeters, because we'll do it just like we did Frostbiter. We'll just, if it's weekend shoots, it's weekend shoots. I mean, we can easily raise $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to start to shoot this thing. So we called Gary and we're like, hey, what do you think? And there you go. So Gary.
Yeah, actually, so we, like I said, coming off of Frostbiter, we went back out into the work world, right? We're working on other people's stuff, and I kept doing effects and that. And I had this idea about doing a giant mosquito movie for a while, because I loved all the giant ant movie, and all the 50s movies. So it's a real homage to that. But I was trying to figure out what to do for my first directorial movie. And I wanted to do something that would stand out, and I had started something, and Tom worked on with me, a thing called The Sportsman, and that was campers going up north, being hunted by a crazed forest ranger, all the standard stuff. But I kept going back to the giant mosquito thing because I thought, well, it hadn't been done, I mean, we had the insect movies, we had different things, grasshoppers and everything, but I thought, well, mosquito, if it's a big enough mosquito, it sucks all your blood. Then if you have a shotgun and you shoot it, we can blow it up and we can say the bloodiest movie ever made. So there was a whole lot of ideas floating around about how to make a stink, how to make something, catch. Yeah. Knowing we weren't going to have a lot of money, we weren't going to have big name stars, none of that stuff, right? So I kind of came up with that. I had been putzing around with it, and then Tom called and said, "Hey, let's talk." So I remember we got in there and we just started talking about ideas and everything, and everybody I think we took a vote, and everybody said, "Yeah, skeeters, let's make skeeters," And I had a couple of connections, a couple of partners in the wings that were instrumental in helping put some money together. And so we kind of all partnered up and felt, well, this is the way to go, And I think at the time too, our intention was we'll make it like Frostbiter, right? Seat of the pants, da-da-da. Well, I was thinking, well, we got to be bigger, Of course, it's got to be bigger. But I remember going, guys, we got to, we might need to be a little bigger. So I had originally written the script with a buddy of mine named Steve Hodge, and he had worked on a couple of things. He made a movie called The Nostril Picker. It was called The Changer. It got changed to The Nostril Picker. But we wrote like the original script, and then Tom came in once we partnered up, and we rewrote it. And one of the things Tom did was great because, I had this idea for the film, and it was ridiculously huge, right? Yeah. As I said, I'm thinking, no, it's big, right? I had terrorists blowing up a nuclear power plant, and the nuclear, fusion material goes into the water, and a mosquito grows big, and there's a train, and helicopters, and it was completely out of orbit. And so I remember when Tom came in, we're like, okay, well, what's this got to really be? Tom's like, it's a cabin in the wood, it's got to be a house, we got to make it. We got to make it manageable. So one of the things we did is, we took it back down. So we got rid of all the stuff that we knew we couldn't do. What's the story? And it was at that time, then it was like, okay, alien DNA, I was thinking War of the Worlds, and the alien arm comes out and a mosquito bites it. And it's, you had to have the reason for them to grow big. Yeah. So we really went that route with it, and it will also put us into, it was good because it put us in more of a sci-fi realm, where we could have a little bit of science fiction. And one of the effects guys we worked with, Richard Jacobson, he had built a motion control rig. This guy's like a phenomenal mechanic and a filmmaker guy and just technical stuff. And he had built a motion control rig. So we're like, well, hey, let's put a spaceship on it and he can shoot the Star Wars-y spaceships opening sequence for us. So again, it was us going back and cherry picking all the things we could do or could get that could make it seem bigger, for the budget. Tom's family had a farmhouse. And of course he said, well, we can get the farmhouse. So we're like, we got us a farmhouse, right? And so, we used that for the exterior. We built our interiors and everything, but that's kind of how it all came together. But the story, real basic story, is a camp ranger, Megan. She's got a new job and she's going up to the campground to start a new job. And her boyfriend, Ray, is kind of a punk truck driver kind of guy. It's like, whatever. He's taking her up to work. And along the way, they hit a giant mosquito on the road. And she's like, this is looks like a, proboscis. And she's talking about all the bullshit. And he's like, yeah, big deal. Well, when they get to the campground, of course, alien spaceship had crashed. Mosquitoes are growing big. And before she gets to the campground, the mosquitoes attack and just kill everybody in the campground. And when they get there, everybody's dead. And
that shot you have of the camera panning over all the dead bodies is awesome.
Yeah, so, we set it up with introducing those characters, and we introduced the character of the scientist, played by, good buddy of ours, Steve Dixon, who we met on the carrier. Once again, it's that whole circle. We worked with Steve Dixon on that movie, and he played a doctor in that movie. And I think me and Tom, we said, man, Steve's got authority, he's the professor. So we gave him a Geiger counter, and he was out looking for the meteor. Then I had been corresponding with Gunnar Henson for years. I wanted him to be in my Sportsman film. That didn't happen. So I said, hey, why don't you come out and be in this one? And he agreed. So he would play the bad guy. And so we had the bad guys, the good guys, and the scientists. So, we had our Gilligan's Island of people coming together. Really, it's Gilligan's Island, right?
Yeah.
And so when we show up at the campsite, of course, we're like, well, where does Ron fit in? Well, Ron's got to play a camp count, a camp
under the boat.
Yeah, he's just, it's Ron. And we were like, after Frostbiter,
we knew who
Ron was.
Right.
We knew who Ron Ashton was and how we could utilize him, and he could really lift the movie in a different direction. And you could always go to him for some humor. We also knew, even though we play the movie, we're being serious with the movie. Because of our budget and our experience, there's a certain amount of camp that's going to come into it. No matter what we try to do, it's going to be there. Now, we put some of it there. Some of it was unintentional, but we thought, well, if you've got Ron Ashton in there and it goes a little campy, we'll just blame Ron and it's okay because that's who Ron is. It's great, right? But so that was really it. Just create all the characters, get them to the campground. Mosquitoes are attacking and they all have to join forces. And my mom had a motorhome, which was called the Paddy Wagon. Her name was Pat. And it was a motorhome she had always wanted to go camping in. And so she had that for a few years. And I asked her if we could borrow it to use as a production vehicle and as a camera vehicle, to shoot it in the movie. And I said, we'd get it back to her and the movie's done.
Oh.
And, this was perfect. We could use it for makeup. We could use it, for the bathroom. We could be on location and it would be a prop, a live action prop. Well, she went to me, she said, no, listen, why don't you just take the motorhome? Because I know when you're done with it, it will be trashed. It won't be worth anything. And she was kind of right. I mean, we, it got ran into a tree and the toilet stopped working pretty much on day 2, because it just blew up. So, we trashed it. But so it's really about getting all those elements. We had a house, so script leaned that way. We had a motorhome. That was the big chase vehicle. We could build a miniature of it for the crash scene because we could do the effects. So we were building on everything we could do and we had done. And that came from, so really Frostbiter set the stage for Mosquito to happen in a big, in the big way that, we all moved into that different direction. And it was also me going, well, if the mosquitoes are this big, it's no big deal, but if they're 3 feet and they can almost carry you, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So we did that, and I thought, that's the key. And we had a couple of key scenes. I had they're called the Genesis shot. If you've seen the movie, there's a scene in the campground at night with the guy and the girl, the two lovers, and the guy leaves the tent. Well, that shot the Genesis shot is when the girl rolls over and looks and she thinks it's the boyfriend and it's the giant mosquito.
My wife was like, what's that mosquito gonna do? Oh God. Well,
it was her point of view, which I think Tom coined it, the Genesis shot, because I drew a storyboard, of the mosquito, looking past the girl's breast to the giant mosquito with the stinger.
Yeah.
Very phallic, right? And I'm like, if this is in the movie, nobody has seen this. This is cool. This will get people to remember it. So we kind of call it the Genesis shot. But it was really that, a bunch of thumbnail ideas like that, found its way into the script. And then the big giant script got honed down when Tom came in, but to a workable thing.
Well, I have to tell you, Gary, I was out in Los Angeles, and I had a friend working on Flubber, the Robin Williams movie. They were shooting some of the effects, and I went to the effects stage to visit them. And I walked into the effects stage, and this guy immediately walked me around to everyone and introduced me as the guy who shot the stinger in the ass. Because this guy was doing video playback, and every once in a while, just to keep everybody smiling and laughing, he would flash that scene up on the video playback. And so it kind of became a legend there on the set of Flubber. And so
I'm going to think about that every time I see Flubber now, is behind the scenes, they're all thinking about mosquito.
Well, we shot that, so we had the farmhouse, which we shot the exteriors, but we had friends of ours had a factory, a tool and die shop in Detroit, and they were moving to a new building, and we commandeered the old building. They became one of our investors and gave us the building for a year. So we had a building and, with utilities and everything. So we built our sets in there. It was basically our studio. It was all the interior sets, all the makeup effects, the miniature motorhome crash, everything was built in there. And we built the miniature house in there, which was like 8.5 foot tall by 12, 14 foot. We took that out on a location to blow up for the end of the movie.
That explosion is impressive. Like, a lot of times you could tell if it's a miniature being blown up, and when I watched it, I was like, did they blow up a real house? that was
yeah,
great.
It was like a third scale, like 1/3 scale. It was pretty big.
Yeah, I remember calling Gary, and he had just received the dailies, and I was somewhere else. And I called him, and I said, how does it look? And Gary said, it looks as good as anything out of ILM. And I said, no, shut up. How does it look? He said, it looks as good as anything out of ILM. It looks incredible. And I said, wow. And yeah, it did. It really, really came off well.
Well, it was really we basically had a whole day. I mean, it was right around the end of the shoot. I think we had a PA working on the film whose parents were away for the weekend. And we said, hey, we need a field to set this up and blow it up. And he goes, hey, come to my house. So we went out to his house. I remember we loaded everything up, went out there, got there before noon, and we spent all day setting up this big miniature, huge, miniature. And then it took us all day to rig all the pyro in it. And we blew it up at like 2:00 in the morning. We had like 5 or 6 cameras on it. But we had the fire department came out, and they were there with their fire truck, and they were asleep. And we woke them up and said, hey, we're ready to blow it up. They woke up and they had their fire hoses ready, and we blew it up, and they came in and put it out, But it was really cool. Well, I knew when we did that, once we blew the house up, I was pretty sure we had something, but it went pretty quick, and we were shooting at high speed and everything. But I just felt at the end of that, after we blew that up, that we had an end for the movie, because as a kid growing up, I'd ask my dad to wake me up, because Bridge on the River Kwai would be on and it'd be late, I'd say, wake me up at the very end when they blow up the bridge, so wake us up at 11 o'clock or 10:45 to watch the bridge blow up. But I always felt like if you go back through the movies and some of my favorite movies, you'll see where I've been going with my career. You look at Bridge on the River Kwai, look at Jaws, Bonnie and Clyde, pick the movie, Scarface. Pick the movie. The greats, they take you on this roller coaster, and they keep topping. They keep bumping it up. And then at the end, there's that Taxi Driver or whatever, there's that explosion of either violence or action or a resolution that's because it's been bottled up the whole movie. And I always feel like it gives that audience a great ride, you know?
Yeah.
So you always got to blow something up at the end. Something's got to blow up, you know?
Exactly.
Well, it's funny that he says that, Zach, because I think Gary's got me booked in a couple weeks to go shoot with our Epic, our red cameras, high speed, something blowing up for the end of his new movie.
That's correct.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
We're gonna blow up part of the Shawshank prison.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's serious. He shot in that prison, his new film, and he's blowing it up at the end. So he's been working on the miniature.
That sounds like fun.
Just part of it.
I've only ever blown stuff up with air compressors in a movie. I'd like to get the budget one day to get the pilot.
I don't even know a guy, Gary, right there.
Right.
He can help you out.
Well, I used to back when me and Tom had started out, when I was doing effects, this was back in the 80s. It was a whole different time frame. And I would go, and I remember getting pyrotechnician licenses and getting, ATF licenses for guns, and you had to fill forms out and do all this stuff, and you had to have storage facilities. It was a different time, and I used to do a lot of fireworks shows. A friend of mine had a fireworks company. So we would make fireworks and go shoot off shows. So, you kind of rural areas, you could do those things back then, it was a little more. So I was able to learn, and get enough practice to learn how to deal with pyrotechnics. But I don't really carry the licenses or do it anymore. But it was definitely something back in the day. It was, blowing up the miniatures and everything was always a fun thing. So we're going to do a lot of it this time. We have air mortars and air cannons and some propane stuff. So it's going to be a little less, won't necessarily, it'll be spectacular.
Yeah.
A little like Mosquito.
Awesome. I can't wait. So let's talk about Tom's new movie, The Wind Walker. Play the trailer right now.
I haven't much time. I have to tell you about the legends. I tried to save him. He was consumed by what he discovered.
Oh my God. It's your dad's story.
The Windwalker.
What about the kids? Let's be hurry. We gotta get out of here.
So that was the trailer for The Wind Walker. Tom, you want to tell us a little bit about the movie? I watched this, and it felt like a spiritual sequel to Frostbiter, Wrath of the Wendigo. I don't know if that was your intention, but it felt to me that the character of Jack was you looking back on the younger version of you making Frostbiter and wanting to revisit that territory.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it was really, like I said, a surreal experience because the movie actually played in Iceland, Windwalker. That was the first film festival that it played in. It was scheduled to play in a number of film festivals this year that were all canceled due to COVID, which is really a bummer. But watching Windwalker with a crowd, and then that same evening watching Frostbiter, I kind of agree with you and talk to a number of people that said, wow, it was almost like a Hollywood version of Frostbiter, and seeing Frostbiter, and it had all this energy and crazy frenetic camera moves and, monsters coming up from all over the place. And then Windwalker, which was a little, perhaps more tamed in terms of camera movement and everything. But, yeah, it was kind of a project I've been working on for a long time. Took a long time to make because, to be honest, the budget was about the same as Frostbiter. And just spent years doing the digital effects. Most of them were done by 2 or 3 of us, and yeah, that's it.
I had a good time watching this, just because of the subject matter, how it just felt like, if there was a Frostbiter 2 25 years later, this would be the movie. And like, what happened to everybody in the cabin? You know, they disappeared or died. And you want to tell a synopsis of Windwalker?
Yeah, so Windwalker is the tale of Jack Vincent Jr., and Jack Vincent Jr. is a young, successful author who 25 years ago, his father disappeared, who also was an author. So the way to look at it was, I kind of thought, like, if Jack Vincent Sr. was H.P. Lovecraft and Jack Vincent Jr. was Stephen King, right? So Jack Vincent Sr. disappeared 25 years ago. He was up at a cabin in northern Michigan writing his theoretical greatest novel ever, The Windwalker, and he disappears. So 25 years later, Jack Vincent Jr.'s publisher convinces him to go back to the cabin and finish his father's book. Well, what he discovers is that his father had discovered more than just a book. It wasn't just a story. So he unfolds this entire history and legend and kind of releases the Windwalker and then has to put it back down. And so it was in many ways a parallel story to the Wendigo.
That's awesome. What kind of draws you to the Native American lore from these two movies? Is it just something that stuck with you, or?
You know, I think just growing up here in Michigan with such a strong tie to the Ojibwa Nation and just all of that great history, and I guess I'm just drawn to that. Obviously, I spent a lot of my life researching that. Did a lot of research into the Ojibwa language and nations to do the film, and it's just something that really tickles my fancy. So
that's awesome, and it's on Amazon Prime right now, which, like you said, unfortunately because of everything, it couldn't play in the festivals, but it's definitely worth watching, and I'm glad I was able to see it. So is there a physical release planned for the Windwalker?
So it's out there everywhere. It's on iTunes, it's on Amazon Prime, it's on Google Play. The DVD is out there. The DVD, it's been released all around the world. One of the things that I would like to mention is that one of the reviews even said it kind of feels like a Goosebumps to me, and I really wanted to make something that you could watch with your family. Another reviewer said it's a great introduction to horror movies for a family if you have a young family. There are no guns in it. There's very little swearing. I was trying to do what the Ray Harryhausen movies did for me when I was a kid. Just kind of a fantastic story with great monsters and lore behind it. And it seems to me that people that watch it with their families really enjoy it. Perhaps people looking for just the blown out, scary ass horror movie are not as happy with it as the people introducing their kids to a horror movie, or wanting to watch something as an entire family.
And the creature design of the Windwalkers look, and you have one of the Windwalkers behind you, which
so that actually my son did that. He recently graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in art and design, and had worked with some of the great photographers there at the university. David Turnley, Pulitzer Prize winner, and he studied sculpting. And so he came in, and when he graduated, unlike most fathers, I said, why don't you just stick around for a little bit? Don't get a job. Help me finish this thing. And so he did. And he sculpted the creature. He went to Los Angeles. He did the sound mix. He was great. He was very instrumental in getting the whole movie finished.
I noticed from the credits, it looked like you had a lot of family working on and acting in the movie.
Yeah, so it's a small project. It's probably smaller than Frostbiter, to be honest. It's funny because I would tell at the sound mix, the guy would say, well, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't I'm like, You don't understand. This was two guys in a camera. Like it was very often me on the camera, maybe my wife, holding a light, and the talent in front of us. So it was a very, very small movie. Again, the budget was probably less than Frostbiter.
It's a lot of fun, and I think, yeah, if you like Frostbiter, definitely check out The Windwalker.
I know when I saw the screening, I went up to Tom afterwards because I didn't work on the movie. I had seen a few things along the way. So after I saw the movie, I went, "Wow, okay." When we were making Frostbiter, all the ideas Tom had and all the lore and the fantasy elements and all that, it's all the same, and it's just it's just a little bit of experience. It's a little bit of experience, getting a little bit older, and then really kind of rounding back to, I think, what was the inspiration that got you interested in movies. So what I would say is you watch The Windwalker and then go watch Frostbiter to see how The Windwalker came about. Because to me, it really is the extension. I think I said to Tom after the screening, I was very impressed. I mean, I was like, holy shit, man. I mean, you really pulled off something here huge. And I'm like, you did the things, whatever you didn't get in Frostbiter or whatever lacked in Frostbiter that didn't come through, you did it here tenfold. So I felt like it was a real, they're really in the same family. But I think it's watch Windwalker and then go find, Frostbiter, and you'll go, I see the connection.
It's definitely a good night, and throw Mosquito in there for the triple feature. for the whole evening.
Yeah, well, you'll have to, get the kids and you watch Windwalker with the kids, send the kids to bed, then you can watch Mosquito, or either one, Mosquito or Frostbiter. But then the movies will progressively get a little bit more more independent, let's say. Closer to Ron Ashton's, we have no submarines, but the other things are in those other movies.
Exactly. Well, I want to say thank you to both of you for coming on. And Gary, do you have anything that you want to promote, or where can they follow you on the internet if that's a thing for you?
Actually, so what we have, the new project I'm doing, and I should be finished here shortly this year, is called Escape from Death Block 13. And we're in the final stages of post right now. We should be finishing up within the next month or so. So first of the year is when it's probably going to become, first quarter of next year will become available. I'll be heading out in January to go meet with distributors and that. So, but you can go online right now. We still have our trailer up that we've had up for a while. It's on YouTube, called Escape from Death Block 13.
Your lead looks like Charlie Bronson.
Our lead guy is Robert Kovacs, Robert Bronzy. And yes, he resembles Charles Bronson. And I worked on another movie with him that I came in and helped produce. And I met him at Texas Frightmare. And I wanted to do this action movie. And I thought, I'm a fan of the 70s movies and early 80s. That my era was there, grew up on those. And I thought, if I have this guy in the movie, the audience they'll get the love of those earlier movies that I had. Because in my movie, it's very much a throwback to those action movies, Escape from Death Block 13. So we got him in it. And also Chris Hahn, who's a good buddy, who played Bunyan in Axe Giant, The Wrath of Paul Bunyan. He stars in it. And then Nick Turturro plays a bad guy in it. And Lawrence Hilton Jacobs plays Langley, who's a CIA operative. Nice. So we've got a nice, good little cast of people in it. And a lot of our inmates in the movie are wrestlers.
Nice.
And so big wrestling cast who tends to do a lot of fighting and destruction. So you can imagine where it's going. But we'll look for it early next year. But you can check out the trailer online, and then we have the Facebook page and the YouTube page, and all that stuff's going up shortly. So keep an eye out for it.
Can do. What about you, Tom? Where can they follow you, or what should we be looking for next?
There are a couple projects I'm working on. I'm not sure. There's a lot of interest from Iceland. I was sent a novel that was written in Iceland that some people there have trying to encourage me to do, and Lighthouse thing. But I may be doing something next year relatively quick, a short shoot, maybe 10 days, 2 weeks. So we'll see.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Zach. It's been a great evening.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, and we'll sign off. I'll join back in the audience in just a bit. Wow, that was awesome. Thank you, Tom and Gary. That was a real treat. One thing I like to do on the show is to pair the movie up with a non-Troma title for a double feature. Windwalker and Mosquito would both make great double features with Frostbiter, and at the time of recording, you could find both on Amazon. But the film I chose to do my double is 1978's The Manitou.
How long have you had this?
About 3 days.
It has been 400 years since its last reincarnation.
Any pain?
It kind of moves sometimes.
The soul of black magic is waiting to be reborn.
What's your diagnosis?
For years, man has turned his back on the supernatural.
Mrs. Hurst! Might almost describe it,
Some will deny it.
as a fetus.
Others will fear it.
On her neck?
One woman will give birth to it. The Manitou. Since the beginning of time, it has practiced the mysterious arts. Its day is near. Each hour it grows stronger. Soon it will come. The Manitou. Starring Tony Curtis on a supernatural journey into the world of avenging spirits. John! Michael Ansara.
What does a white man want with Indian magic?
A modern American Indian thrust into a savage struggle with unspeakable taboos. Susan Strasberg, living in a nightmare. Innocent people, tormented by terror. Threatened by the unknown. Trapped by an ancient horror. The Manitou. An evil that never dies. It just waits to be reborn. The Manitou.
That was the trailer for The Manitou, directed by William Girdler, who directed such films as Abby, Grizzly, Sheba Baby, and even the Troma movie Project Kill. That one stars Leslie Nielsen. The Manitou stars Tony Curtis, and it has a fun appearance by Burgess Meredith. It's about the story's about there's this woman who finds a lump growing on her neck, and when she gets it checked out by the doctors, it turns out to be a fetus, and it keeps growing larger and larger. That fetus is actually a 400-year-old demonic Native American spirit. This movie is absolutely bonkers and totally worth watching. And seeing 1970s era footage of San Francisco is awesome, as well as the practical effects. Scream Factory put out a great-looking Blu-ray, and it's totally worth checking out. Frostbiter is on DVD, VHS, and you can see it on Troma now at watch.troma.com. Well, that's all the time for now. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, at Lego Larry, or follow the show on Twitter, at Talkin Troma. I look forward to bringing you all another Tromasterpiece next time. I'm going to leave you with a short clip of Ron Ashton talking about making music and movies, and always, stay traumatized.
I want to do produce films, act in films, and do the soundtracks. I still want to stay in music. I'll still do albums, rock albums, but I want to do movie soundtrack albums also. And act and write the whole thing.